So we're going to take our time and see what happens. You know, it's like a new relationship.
Yeah.
That's a new relationship. See what happens. Honeymoon period.
Hello, welcome to my studio and welcome to another edition of Art Success with me, Adelaide Damoah. Today's artist is a really exciting fine art photographer based here in London. His name is Othello De'Souza-Hartley. You may have seen a previous video, which was one of my exhibition vlogs, where I was discussing the work that he had in his most recent show at the Sulger-Buel Lovell Gallery in London. If you haven't seen it and would like to, it's linked in the description bar below this video on YouTube. Othello graduated with a degree in fine art photography in the year 2000 from Central St Martin's in London, and then went on to receive his MA in fine art from the Camberwell School of Art. Othello describes himself as being a frustrated painter with a love for drawing, and his favourite painter is Caravaggio, the master of light and dark, and you can see that influence in his work because of his use of light and also composition. Othello is one of the most organised artists I've ever met. I mean, he's literally got 2 years of work planned for the next, well, 2 years. Othello is represented by the Sulger-Buel Lovell Gallery here in London, and like I said, he's currently in a group show which is going on until the 7th of August 2016. So if you haven't seen it and would like to, the details are below. And if you would like to see a summary of the exhibition, or at least Othello's work within that exhibition, please click the link below to the interview that I did with him for my exhibition vlog. Othello was kind enough to offer up some of his time to discuss his thoughts on art and success with me. And because he had so much to say, I've decided to split this video into 2 parts. So what you're watching now is part 1. Part 2 will be linked at the end of this video. Thank you. Do you do anything else to support your practice?
I teach, yeah. So I teach at Ravensbourne, but I did 0 contract hours again. So my whole life is like this kind of free lifestyle, which I want. I was offered 2 days a week or 3 days a week at one of the universities, and I was like, no, I like it as I am. So I teach at Ravensbourne and Central St Martin's, but everything is just, you know, I'm 0 contract hours, so it's like St Martin's I get the least work in, but every now and again they have these projects. Do you want some work? I'm like, yeah, I'll take it. With Ravensbourne, same thing. It's like we've got X amount of hours. How many hours do you want? And I did some workshops at the National Portrait Gallery and the Photographers Gallery. Sometimes, yeah, in some other places.
Okay, where's your studio?
So right now I haven't got a studio. Okay. So I have got a studio. I used to was at Bermondsey, and recently I just built my parents had this old shed in their garden. So my mum was like, listen, right, while you're trying to get yourself together with another studio, why don't you just take over the little shed? So we converted the shed into like a small studio for now. So I figure out what I'm doing, because my flat where I live is a bit small, but I really want to combine living and working together, because like I said, I don't really switch off. I'm one of those people that just want to get out of bed and make work at any point in the day. A whole journey to the studio doesn't really work with me at all.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. And so you're currently represented by
Sulger-Buel Lovell Gallery.
Sulger-Buel Lovell Gallery. I need to get it straight in my head.
It took me a while. Yeah.
Okay, you're currently represented by them. When did that come about?
So I met Christian Sulger. He's the director of the gallery. It's him and Tamsin. I was at Bonham's last year at the African Art Fair, and my friend Sammy, she introduced me to him, and he was like, "Hello, here's my card." And I was like, okay. And then we had a little conversation, you know, online. And then he's like, oh, I've been looking at your work for a while on LinkedIn. I was like, okay. So he said, I'd like to come and see your studio. And I was like, I was all apologetic. My studio's in my parents' garden right now. I was like, okay. And I was really thinking I'll probably get judged. You know, because before that I had this massive studio which got too expensive over in Bermondsey. And he came there and he walked in, he met my parents on a Sunday, and he turned up and we went in the back, and he was like, I love your studio. He loved it. It was a small studio. He was like, this is great. And then 4 days or 3 days later, he sent me a message saying, we'd be interested to represent you, because he had a word with Tamsin. And that was probably like in November. We met in October, November, it was all December, he came to the studio. And then it became sort of official in sort of February or March something. And then they were like, we're going to work towards our first show, a little group show just to introduce you to the gallery. So this was the first show, yeah. And I signed probably a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to take our time and see what happens, you know, it's like a new relationship.
Yeah.
That's a new relationship. See what happens. Honeymoon period.
Yeah. No, congratulations.
Thank you.
Really good.
Yeah.
And so this is your first time of being represented since?
Yeah, first time.
And when did you graduate again?
St Martin's 2000, and then Camberwell 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So in between those in-between bits, were you surviving from your art, or
Yep.
were you taking?
I was just what I did from. So when I graduated in 2000 from St Martin's, actually when I was at St Martin's, I got a job at the Othello Gallery. So I was an invigilator. And when I was at St Martin's, I got a job at the Michael Hopton Gallery over in Chelsea. So I used to work there on Saturdays. And then about 2003, I volunteered at the 198 Gallery. I was a volunteer there for 6 months. Then they offered me like a little job, like a couple of 1 day a week teaching. I did workshops at the 198 Gallery. I think like 2003, I did an internship at ID magazine.
Okay.
So I was an intern at ID magazine. And I think from like 2000 to 2005 were just bits of work. And I was doing little bits of work at Camden Art Centre, but nothing was concrete. I was just doing anything.
Yeah.
Bit of market research as well, sometimes to survive. And then in 2005, I was actually sitting in where I live, and I was sitting there with a friend of mine. It was like August, and we were like, "This is a joke." It's like, why do we pick art careers? Because literally, I was broke, and I was like, you know, my parents are there, right? And then, you know, the parents are all worried about you, and you know, you get family pressure saying, you know, you really picked the right career, and I was like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, so a phone call came, which is literally no lie. A phone call came at literally 5 minutes after that statement from Camden Art Centre, and they were like, "Hello, if we were to give you a commission, what would you do?" And it was like, the main artist is Kerry J. Marshall, and I'd never heard of him before, but Kerry J. Marshall, you're like African American painter. Okay. His work's about civil rights, so what would you do? And I was like, okay. So I just said, look, I would like to do it about people who work for the community. And my initial idea at the time was about people like Trevor McDonald, Zadie Smith, and I was thinking do that. But then after the commission, I thought, no, let's do local heroes. Probably a mistake, because I could have done all the famous people and got loads of publicity, but I did local heroes. And that was my first commission solo show at Camden Art Centre. Which at the time, when I realised who Kerry J. Marshall was, I was like, this guy's like a major artist. And even though I had a small show where he was on, it was like, Kerry J. Marshall, like, wow, he's an amazing guy. I met him, gave him loads of advice about when you're starting out and stuff, so it was great.
Wow. And that just happened just randomly?
That was randomly, I'm telling you, that was randomly, because I was doing a bit, this is what I was saying to people before, like, I was doing little bits of things, like, maybe I'd do a little workshop for kids at the Camden Art Centre, and I had one girl, school girls, turn up, and we used to meet up on like Thursday afternoon and chat. And then I said to her, I was doing internships. I was working for free for the 198 Gallery. I did an internship at ID magazine, but it was always around something to do with photography or art. And then I was an invigilator. I was an invigilator at Serpentine Gallery as well. But it's always in that circle. So yeah, and then randomly, 2005, and I think I've probably just about done a few projects by then. They just called me out of the blue. This is literally out of the blue, and I was like, and the exhibition opens in October. Ooh, could you deliver the work the week before? Then we had a meeting, negotiated a budget. I didn't know anything because it's the first commission I ever had. Didn't know when I was going to start. So I just started researching. I just worked solidly, and I got all the work in and decided on the frames and how I wanted it, and maybe going to things like the National Portrait Gallery and seeing all these people in these big, beautiful gold frames and thinking, there's nobody of colour in these frames, so I want to put black people in gold frames. This is when my love affair with frames started. So I put everybody in these big, beautiful gold frames. Yeah, I just went out and did it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And so with that work, how did it work from a financial perspective? Because you said that they commissioned you.
Yeah.
So they paid you to put the show on.
Right, so they give you a budget, and they say X amount of days you can work.
Yeah.
But you know, Steve, as an artist, if you love what you do, you can calculate in terms of budget. I'm meant to work 3 days a week for the next 3 months. But that's not what you do in arts career. For me, it was like 5 days a week, 6 days a week. That's what I've got. I'll work. All the expenses on top of it, they took care of that. This was my fee to do the work and deliver it a week before the exhibition opened. And I remember at the time they were saying, you don't have to do so much work after that, but I was like, nope, I'm working solidly on this. I was actually doing this, like, I said to you, 6 days a week I was working on this.
Yeah.
You know, wasn't there sitting calculating, well, I've got X amount of money, and I'm probably making as much as someone working at McDonald's, but nah, just like, this is what I want to do, I'm going to do this properly.
But then when the work sells, do you still get a cut? Or how
Well, that work it was on sale, but obviously that's more like archival work.
Okay.
So I've got the work still. I think Autograph has the booklet was done. It's in their archive.
Yeah.
And I think right now, because I think it's more that kind of work, it's much more like archival work. I'm not sure. So maybe like I'm probably thinking of donating it to the Black Archives in Brixton, or giving it, because I think the work has relevance. One of the people in there is Connie Marks, who came over in 1926, and she was a nurse and she helped out during the war and she got medals and stuff. So there's a good historical context, and the first black mayor in the pictures, Dawn Butler's one of them. So I think it's an archive as a British black contribution to the history of British culture. I think it's a great archive for that. And I've got them in my studio. So I think, you know what, I don't know if I think I might give it to somebody, you know, because I think it's part of the history of British culture. We'll see. I don't know what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
we'll
think
see.
Black Cultural Archives would be good. Yeah. Can you remember when you sold your first piece?
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I was at the V&A, and this guy approached me and he said to me, what do you do? And I said, oh yeah, I'm an artist. And he was like, is your work as good as the way you dress? And I was like, what? And I was like, what? I was like, cool. And I said to him, yeah, he goes, I'd love to see some of your work. And it's like a joke thing he was saying. And then anyway, we met up, and then I found out he was a collector of work and stuff. And then we met a few times, and he kept saying, oh, I like your work, you like your work. And he said, maybe I'll buy one of your work. And he's a collector, he's a judge. I was like, really? And he was teasing me. At one point, we were meeting up with a group of us and going to exhibitions, and he had this friend of his from Flowers Gallery. And I think she was the assistant to the main curator of the photography. And out of the blue, he just said, hello, I think I'm ready to buy one of your pieces of work in front of us. And I was like, really? I was like, oh, okay. And then that was it. He bought the piece in the garage.
Wow.
That's about 2 years ago. And then I had this show, and I sold some more work during the show.
What did it feel like when you sold that first piece?
I was amazing. I was like, wow, someone's actually buying my work. And I remember I got my neighbour, he's got a van, and we delivered the work to his place. And I walked into his house, and he's got all these, it's art everywhere, sculpture pieces that he's collected. And he has this room downstairs where he had this piece of work on the wall. And he said, right, that is where your work's going. It's quite a big piece. My work's quite large. It's like 5 foot by 4 foot. And he's like, your work is going to be placed, and this is the piece for your work. So there's this room downstairs where my work just hangs by itself. It was amazing. I was like, wow, yeah.
And what was it like selling work here? That must have been pretty.
Oh, here was amazing. It was like, honestly, it was like, I came here and I was like, obviously I'm the newbie at the gallery, and you're kind of nervous because you are the newbie, and you're like, oh, you know, like I'm the new person in the gallery. Am I going to sell or whatever? And that night, people were just like, we've never seen your work before. Because like, for me, it's like I've always had commissions, but never really shown my work properly anywhere. And, oh, the work's so different to when I see it on the internet. And I'm like, yeah, because for me, it's everything. It's like the frames are hand built, everything's hand printed, comes as finished pieces, and the reception of it was amazing. And then 2 people bought a piece of work. I think there's a third person to buy a piece of work as well. So I was like, yeah, great. I was so happy. Yeah, so yeah, it was good.
Well done.
Thank you.